and will throw me to the side. There we are. We're going to jump right into chapter 6. We're still going book chapter by chapter. There's going to be a lot of these coming. I'm going to try to put 2 to 3 together to see how it rolls out. But again, I think it's pretty important that people understand the 1611 in today's King James Bible is not that different. They want to get hung up on different things, and it's context, but I'm going to be talking about the New Testament. Yes, we will eventually do the Geneva. We will be doing other Bibles as well. One of the key ones I want to be doing too is the Revised Version. You can see that in the screen a little bit in that little home, if you can see that. But anyways, that's from the Westcott Hort situation. This is an 1881 edition. That binding's coming off a little bit. We're going to do all that, and there's some Geneva's the real Bible. There's no changes. Well, that's not completely true. They'll point out one verse and say, look, this is exactly alike. Or, they'll take, I'm not going to go too deep. Look at this verse in New King James. It's exactly the same. They do this all the time. They don't go over everything. They just like to give you what they want and try to get you away from the King James Bible. Now, one could classify me, as I said before, if you've never watched my videos before, as a King James onlyist. And I've often said I never even knew what it was. And I became a King James onlyist before I even knew what the whole term was. You got to remember, I didn't grow up in a King James church, or so to speak. Well, apparently I did, but I didn't know this when I was a child. The Pentecostal church I went to did start out with the King James, and then they switched over to the NIV. Some say they used the NKJV, but mostly they just jumped right over to the NIV. So, and that was still when I was a kiddo. So, and this is going back to the 70s. So they've been NIV since the late 70s, because obviously, 76, 77 NIV, New Testament popped on the scene. All right, let's get right into it. We see Matthew chapter 6. We see this 34 verses. And again, why I do these, scholars, they do the same thing. Modern, they just do the same thing. They give you these numbers without really going through them. They'll pick or cherry pick 1 or 2 things, mostly from the Old Testament. And they see, nobody knows what that means. Yeah. I've proven in the first couple of videos, and I'll go back to using my boys again at 10 and 13. And reading some of these words, and we'll see that it's not as complicated, as difficult as they like to pretend. All right, in Matthew chapter 6, verse 34, we got 34 verses, 788 words, 137 spelling errors, 25 words, or 25 places where the capital has been changed, for a total of 162 changes. So far on the surface, we're like, well, that's a lot. Let's go through briefly. I'm just going to go briefly because you've been through these with me before. If you're tuning in, check out my other videos, the first 5 chapters we did, and you'll see what we do here. You look again, ye 14 times right away. One word 14 times, but they'll say 14 times. If ye was only changed, let's just hypothetically say that only the word ye was changed, okay, the lettering, it'd say, look, there's 14 errors. No, there's not 14 errors. They make it sound like people automatically, whether you believe this or not, people automatically think, wow, there's 14 different. Their brain goes into thinking there's 14 different errors. That's how people's minds work. I'm not saying that they're dumb or anything like that. I'm just saying that's how the mind works. We see a number. Again, you take that virus, you see a number, and you correlate it with something else that has nothing to do with anything. I said this when I used to live up in Connecticut in the beginning of COVID. We were trying to move down here to Tennessee before COVID hit. And am I allowed to say COVID yet? Or is my video going to be banned, even though I'm talking about the Bible? Calm down. But the numbers they gave were the testing numbers. They always 7 million or whatever it was. 7 million people have been tested. Wait, 7 million people. And then you look and like, there's not even that many people in the state. And I'll use this example. It was that one guy. He comes into the Manchester Hospital. I'm in the lobby, not for any virus situation. He walks in. He walks to the front desk. He says to the guy, "I'm here to get a test," and he guy's okay. And he starts right, and automatically the other guy, yeah, I know, down the hall to the right, first door on my left. See, this is what I'm talking about. You get the same person going in there multiple times, so they count that as if he goes there 5 times. They're like, that's 5 tests. It's one guy. It's like ye. It's one word, 14 times. Come on. So do alms. You see, you know what it is. Be seen. Let's go down. You get unto 12 times. Get your chunk numbers there. Need is another one. A lot of these are phonetic, which we'll get to in a second. Kingdom was 3 times. Forgive 6 times, like you couldn't figure out. Forgive. Us 4 times. Moreover is 1 time. And someone will say, well, how come you have a capital over here? Because it's not a capital change. They kept it. The M was capitalized in 1611, and the King James, most likely probably because it started the verse out, and that's why. I'd have to go look at it, but that's more than likely the situation. The and symbols are my favorite. And symbols just says and. You know. Now this one you got to pay attention to, because look, darkness is darkness, but look, darkness is darkness. But if you look closely, it's darkness. Darkness. Now, when I first read it, I went darkness, and I'm like, oh wait, I had to look close. I had to look close to see that it was a different spell. I'm like, hold on, I had to stop and go, oh, it's got an E right there. It's not the same darkness as up right up above it. So I'm reading it. I didn't even catch it right. Darkness when I was reading it. I'm like, oh, that's an error, because that's what they want to do for errors. Therefore, again, you see capitalization here is because it most likely started. Yes, therefore. But if you look closely, or if you're reading quickly, it'll say therefore. You just said therefore. Moving on. And even at that time, it said the same thing. That's what we have to pay attention to. Air, you got a lot of these. Now all these are just 111, you know, so that matches up. Again, a couple times seek here and Shelby. Shelby is an interesting one because this happens a lot. It's compound. Look at this. It's put together. There's 2 words put together here, missing that L. So you split that. Yes, if you wanted to technically call that another error, you could. But again, time frame was not an error. It wasn't an error. So in 2025, you got it here. They changed over the, take where it goes. All right. I'll go to capitals. We see father in 1611 and capitalize. 11 changes right there. We talked about 25. The scholar, 25 errors, but at the end of the day, not so much. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So it's actually 13 errors. If you want to go with the word error. It looks like my internet is not catching a good signal. So hopefully I don't, freeze up or anything like that. Let me know in the comments if you want. All right. There's got the quotations over the word scholars. That's important to have because I don't think some of scholars are just people who want to look good. Okay. So that's 788. So we have 788 words. In reality, 788 times is the same, obviously. 162 errors, the scholars will tell you. Basically, I missed look at that. I missed the other quotation mark right there. Look at that. But actually, it's 79 changes. There would be 79 if you include the capitals, You'll go through all those words. We talked about that they're doubled up 4 times, 3 times, 6 times, 1 word. So in reality, there's not. And again, people say, wow, there's 162 different errors. Well, we know it's not true. 79 changes. And that gives you what? 20.5%. So over 20% of these verses will say, look at that, over 20%, man. Over 20% is wrong. It's errors. But again, in reality, 10% has changed. Now we scroll down here. Look at, I write these in so I can read them off. Now for the next step, let's minus the capital words. No effect on doctrine or understanding. All right, we had the 17, right? Now we take away 13. Why do we take away 13? Where's the 13? 13. Oh, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, I thought I was off on that one. So 13 changes gets you down to 66 changes. Remember that. Now, at that point, 788, because they don't affect doctrine. They're not these big errors or change. They're not errors. All right, 66 changes in the spelling. That's 8. Now you got 66 spelling, I should say. 8.3%. Now you've lowered that down to 8.3%. So now you've gone from 20.5 that the scholars will tell you all errors down to 8.3% because, wait, that's not an error. Okay, a capital change, and the time frame of language, your spelling is different, but different, which is where we get down to. Now let's look at phonetics. Hopefully I spelled that right. All right, you had the 66 spelling words, right, that have changed. 42 are phonetic. And what does that mean? That means you can look at the word and know exactly what it means. Let's roll back up here. The screen goes flying up. Add. Would you have said add or would you have said addy? I don't think you would have said addy. I don't know anybody who would. Qubit. I don't think anybody would have said qubity. Reapy, airy, addy, qubity, toily, spinny. Come on. That's an insult to people to think that they would do that. And that's what the scholars want to do. All right, you roll down here, like I said. Now you got 20. That leaves you with 24 words left, right? That's what? 3%. Now you got 3% change. So now we've gone from 20.5% that the scholars will tell you down to 3% of reality. But we don't stop there. Out of those 24 words, 12 are, that's just an obvious, not obviously. 12 are obviously not phonetic changes, but not phonetics. They're, when you just look at it, you know what the word is. Heaven. Even though there's a U there, you just know it's heaven. So, and I'm trying to be gracious here and give the benefit of the doubt that there are words that you couldn't maybe, you'd have to take a moment, a second, and pause to look at to figure it out, which is why it says 12 left that maybe you might have to think for a second, which leaves you with a 1.5% readability issue. If, again, and I don't see the issue. I honestly don't. But you've gone from 20.5% that the scholars will say, basically, down to the reality of 1.5% issue. And I'm saying issue. So that's how I'm looking at it. So if you look at that, let me just remove that. I'm going to put myself back up there. All right. So there we go. That's chapter 6. Chapter 6, 1.5% readability issue. At the end of the day, is that enough for you to say that I got to get out of the King James because it's too difficult to understand? 1.5% readability issue is not the King James of today. 1.5% readability issue is the 1611. So you should be able to read the King James Bible. I'll say all the time, if you can get through Shakespeare or whoever else wrote things at that time frame, I think you can get rid of the King James. That's exactly what they're trying to do. you can get through to King James. All right, let's hop into Matthew chapter 7. Now, we got 29 verses in this chapter, 626 words, 107 spelling errors, 5 capitals, and 112 changes. We go through again. We see the words what? Judge. We've talked about the I in judge, okay? Or judgment, any J. If you've watched my previous videos, you know that the J first came into prominence in Italy. And I can't remember the guy's name. I'm going to remember one of these days and put it on a note. But it didn't get widespread through Europe and England until the 1620s, 1630s, basically after the King James was written. So, again, no error. There's no error. You know, words. Some say words don't mean what they mean now. Well, that's true. That's true. People have hijacked words and changed the meanings, like gay. Used to be happy. We used to make a joke about that in middle school, but gay is not just happy anymore. It's homosexuals as well. So, yes, people have hijacked words and changed them. Does that mean we should be part of secular society and change with it? What is a fag? Uh-oh, he just said fag. Well, that's two things. It's a bundle of sticks or a cigarette in England. So, you know, now it's a derogatory comment or a slur. Ain't that something? Ain't that something? Why do they change it? I'm firmly in belief that they change words so they can try to get away from using proper words and context. I still remember there was a congressman, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, years ago used the word niggardly. Now, please, YouTube, don't block me because I used the word, but that word actually meant cheap, miserly, you know, and unfortunately we take original definitions and we put them to something it didn't even belong to and had nothing to do with. We do this all the time, and it'll get worse and worse. One day we'll just have emojis as definitions now. All right, you go through these, you see this judge, judgment, judge. We know we're not going to count that symbol. Look at unto. Unto was changed 8 times. One word, 8 times. But again, scholars will say 8 times, 8 errors. If this one word was changed, they'd call it 8 errors. And it's one word. 5 for every. You get down here, you get one receiveth. You got a couple here. I was just talking about heaven before. If you looked at that quick, would you say Hiauin? Hawauin? No, you wouldn't do that. I mean, it looks like, so you'd automatically go, looks like heaven. I don't know why that just all lit up like that. What? Why does that do that? All right. Well, we see heaven, right? It's not complicated. It's not complicated. Would you say do? Say doe. You might say doe. Female deer, I guess. Would you say goey? Or would you say go? I'm not trying to talk down to nobody. I'm just saying they make it sound like it's more difficult to understand. Why did my screen move? I got to figure. Hi, Steven. What's on your mind today? Nothing? Why is that? What? Do I just get that out of there? There you go. What in the world? All right. Sheep's, ravening, wolves. These are words you can tell. You can see it. You know, a lot of these are phonetic, obviously. Will is a phonetic word. You know, will, even though it's missing an L. You're not going to think, who's this guy Will? To think, why do I keep on hitting that button? I'm having fun with that button tonight. All right, rain. That's another one's phonetic. You wouldn't say rainy. Maybe you would, but I don't think you would. All right, we get down to the capital letters again. We see law and law. We see it's changed capitals. From 1611, they went down to the lowercase. The prophets, many times in 1611, you see it. Sometimes the lowercase too, but you'll see a P here is uppercase, and over here it's not. Again, we see father, depart, scribes. Sometimes you'll see priest as well, capitalized and then lowercase. Well, we're only 20 minutes in. We're doing a good job. I'm trying to speed through this for you all to make sure it doesn't take too long. All right, now we get to the scholar part. This is the fun part. Ooh, let me hide that percentage number. It's supposed to be a surprise. All right, 626 words. And the scholars will tell you what? 112 errors. Wow. So that's 17.8%. At least they're a little lower on their percentages. 17.8%. Yeah, but Stephen, look, over in the reality section, 10.2 is not that big of a difference. It's still 10%. All right, well, now let's minus those 6 J's for obvious reasons that we spoke about before, Italy, and the fact that J was not widely used yet. H was in its place as well, and we can look at a lot of S and Fs and in that time frame. So again, something may have changed and the letters have become usable, but it didn't make them errors. There are misprints and errors, don't get me wrong, but those are not errors. You take out the 6 words that have J in them, you are now left with 58. Again, I love the quotation mark, errors. That leaves you at 9.2%. Well, Steve, that's still pretty high. Well, I agree with you. 9%, that's a lot of changes right there. Now, let's look at the phonetics. As we said before, out of those 58, 37 are easy to pronounce. I just looked at again, will, need, things that you would look at, even though it's not spelled properly in today's context, but you could still look at it and go, looks like need to me. You wouldn't say agani, reedy. Come on. You wouldn't do that today, and they definitely didn't do it then. Now that leaves us with 21, which is 3.4%. We have now gone from 17.8% in quote unquote errors to 3.4% quote unquote errors. Now, in my opinion, as I wrote here, there is a total of 16 words that are obvious to figure out. We talked about this before. They're obvious to figure out what they are, which leaves us with 5 that possibly, maybe, there's an outside chance, will make you pause for a moment, reread the word to see what it says. But even then, I don't think so. So you take that 5, and again, I'm trying to give you some, even though I think they're obvious. But I'm trying to think outside the box and say, okay, let's just say I really have no idea how to pronounce anything in the English language, even as an English person. And I have very much difficulties. Okay. So that leaves us 5. And that lowers us down to 0.007% readability issue. So we've gone from their 17.8% errors, again, quote unquote errors, down, and we go over here to 10.2% on the surface of the changes, minus the J's, which weren't not an error. Phonetics, you can easily pronounce it. There's no issues. Down that gets you 3.4%. Now you take out the 16 words that are pretty obvious. You got 5 left. It's 007 apparently. James Bond over here. 0.007%. 17.8%. That the scholars will try to get you with. The 0 or 0.007% readability issue. I don't know. I think the King James is pretty easy to read, I guess, huh? And some of these words goes, oh, well, it's an archaic word. And again, most of your archaic words are in the Old Testament, as far as I'm concerned. Not as much as the New Testament. But even then, yeah, there's a couple words there. Can't look it up. I'll tell you this, if you have any, now people will get mad at me for using the word preacher, pastor. There's no such thing. I'm not saying that there should be or shouldn't be. I'm just saying most people know what a preacher and a pastor is. And if you do go to church, if you go to a church building, you realize that they can't take the 10 seconds to explain a word to you. Is that going to mess up their whole flow? Well, if it does, then they shouldn't be up there. That's just my opinion. That's personally my opinion. It takes 10 seconds to explain what a word means. That's it. I'm just saying. So let's recap real quick. Let's really recap. So we got 1.5% readability issue on chapter 6. And then you got a 0.07% readability issue on chapter 7. If I was going to do the math, that definitely comes on, both put those two together. There's maybe what? All right, let's look at this. I should have done a summary. So out of 626 words, you go over here, I think it's 788. Yeah. So 13, what, 14, 40, 1,450 words. Under 1% of it is an issue, or could be possibly considered an issue. All right, with that, I want to say thank you for your time. I do appreciate it. Let me just pull that up. Put that up. I love that picture. I do appreciate it. We got that done under half an hour, so that's great. I may have sped through it, but you can pause in different sections. Don't let anyone make you doubt the King James Bible. You're going to see all of these guys out there, the Mark Wards and the James Whites and the Wes Huffs, the Dan Wallaces. I'm trying to think of all the words got out, all the people out there. I can't think of all their names. Boy, they don't all run in my head at the moment. A lot of these guys, they just want you to not only buy their books and their commentaries and their explanations and all of that. They want you out of that King James Bible. I think some, when they say they don't have anything against the King James Bible, we love the King James Bible. We just think it's got a bunch of mistakes and errors. We love that Bible. It's a beautiful Bible. It's a great Bible, wonderful Bible. But you shouldn't read it and shouldn't buy it because it's too old. Doesn't sound like a lot of love to me. All right. With that, I do appreciate your time as always. I'm going to go ahead and remove myself.